A very good evening, aspirants. Welcome to Daily Newspaper Analysis of Shankar IAS Academy. Displayed here are the list of news articles that we are going to discuss today. As you can see, we have chosen news articles from different newspapers. So without much delay, let us get into the first news article discussion. Look at this article from The Hindu newspaper. This article talks about a study that highlights the challenging conditions faced by app-based cab drivers and delivery personnel in India. According to the study, a large portion of these gig workers, especially those from marginalized communities, are overworked and underpaid, and they also lack social and job security. So the particular study calls for better social security measures and government oversight to ensure fairness and reduce the exploitation of gig workers. This is the crux of the news article given here. In this background, let us understand who are gig workers and the steps taken by the Indian government for their improvement. So, who are gig workers, or what does the term gig economy mean? See, the gig economy is a way of working where people take on short-term jobs or projects, that is gigs, instead of having a permanent job. It's like picking up individual tasks that fit your schedule and skills. So gig workers can be independent contractors, online platform workers, contract firm workers, on-call workers, or temporary workers. Remember, gig workers enter into formal agreement with on-demand companies to provide services to the company's clients. As per Niti Aayog's report on gig economy, India is becoming a big place for gig work. Right now, there are about 7.7 million gig workers in India, and it is expected that this number will grow to 23.5 million in a few years, making up about 4% of all jobs in the country. Most of these jobs are in three categories. Firstly, low-skilled work like driving cab and delivering food. They make up about 31%. Then the middle skilled jobs like plumbing and beauty services, they share about 47%, and the high skilled work like designing and tutoring is around 22%. So this is about the term gig economy and the current trend related to the gig economy. Also remember, the government of India has taken several steps to provide social security for gig workers. Now let us see them one by one. First one is Code on Social Security 2020. See, this legislation includes provision for setting up a social security fund for gig and platform workers. Employers participating in the gig economy are required to contribute towards this fund, which aims to provide benefits like health insurance, maternity benefits, and pension to gig workers. Second is universal minimum wage. See, the Code on Wages 2019 introduces the concept of a universal minimum wage that applies to all workers, including those in the gig economy. This ensures that gig workers are guaranteed a minimum income regardless of the nature of their work or the sector they are employed in. Thirdly, the Code on Social Security 2020. This code formally recognizes gig workers and platform workers and provides a legal definition for them. This recognition is crucial for extending various social security benefits to gig workers, as it acknowledges their contribution to the economy and the need for their protection. So these steps reflect the government's commitment to address the challenges faced by gig workers. However, the implementation of these policies and their effectiveness in providing comprehensive protection to gig workers continue to be areas of focus and development. So these are certain facts that you have to remember about gig workers. Very important topic. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Look at this news article from LiveMint. See, during the COVID-19 pandemic, global travel restrictions led to an unprecedented number of flight cancellations. So the customers who had booked flights found themselves in a tough situation seeking refunds for services. However, obtaining these refunds proved difficult for many, leading to widespread consumer dissatisfaction. So the article highlights how the Central Consumer Protection Authority (CCPA) took decisive action to address the issue of delayed refunds from travel aggregators and tour agencies. So in this background, let us understand about Central Consumer Protection Authority (CCPA) from the prelims perspective. So remember, the Central Consumer Protection Authority (CCPA) is a regulatory body established under the Consumer Protection Act 2019 in India. Its primary role is to protect, promote, and enforce the rights rights of consumers as a class. Also, it has the authority to investigate, recall, refund and enforce safety notices and penalties for goods and services that are dangerous, hazardous or misleading. So what is the composition of this particular body? See, the authority is headed by a chief commissioner with 2 additional commissioners. One deals with matter related to goods and the other focuses on cases related to services. This composition ensures a focused and specialized approach towards the protection of consumer rights across different sectors. The CCPA operates under the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution. This ministry is responsible for formulating and implementing national policies for the protection and promotion of consumer rights and ensuring effective food distribution. So what are all the powers and functions of this particular authority? See, the CCPA is vested with several significant powers to safeguard consumer interest. Firstly, it can conduct investigations into violation of consumer rights. It has the authority to institute compliance or prosecutions against entities violating consumer rights. The CCPA can also order the recall of unsafe goods and services. This will ensure that consumers are not exposed to any harm. Similarly, it can order the discontinuation of unfair trade practices and misleading advertisements. This will promote transparency and honesty in business practices. Along with this, the authority can impose penalties on manufacturers, endorsers, and publishers of misleading advertisements. This will act as a deterrent against the dissemination of false information. So these are certain facts that you have to remember about CCPA. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Take a look at this news article. This news article talks about the recently held WTO Ministerial Conference in Abu Dhabi. It was concluded with an adoption of the Declaration for Reforms in WTO. So in this backdrop, let us understand about the 13th Ministerial Conference of WTO in brief and its impact on India with our mains answer writing discussion. See, this question can be asked under GS paper 3. I have mentioned the syllabus for this particular topic. Just go through it. Now let me read out the question for you. Discuss the outcomes of the recent 13th Ministerial Conference MC13 of World Trade Organization WTO and its impacts on India. See, here the only keyword is discuss. So whenever discuss is given as a keyword, you are expected to discuss various aspects of that particular subject. So this is what we are going to do in this particular discussion. Moving on to the introduction part, here you can write that 13th Ministerial Conference MC13 of the World Trade Organization took place in Abu Dhabi, UAE. Ministers from diverse levels of development and varying geopolitical perspectives convened to address a wide array of crucial subjects, including but not limiting to food security, e-commerce, fisheries, subsidies, WTO reforms, domestic regulation of services and investment facilitation. So this way you can give a brief introduction about what happened in the 13th Ministerial Conference of WTO. Now moving on to the main body of the answer, here you can split the main body of the answer into 2 parts. Firstly, you have to explain about the outcomes of the Ministerial Conference, and in the second part you have to write about how the outcomes will impact India. So let us first see the outcomes of the 13th Ministerial Conference of WTO. See, on the first day of MC13, ministers endorsed the accession to the WTO of 2 least developed countries, Comoros and Timor-Leste. So this brings the organization's membership to 166, representing 98% of the world trade. In addition, ministers reviewed their commitment to achieve a fully functional dispute settlement system accessible to all members by 2024. Moving on to e-commerce reforms, WTO ministers decided to renew the e-commerce moratorium until MC14 or 31st March 2026, whichever is earlier. And also it was decided to extend a moratorium on so-called non-violation and situation compliance under the TRIPS agreement. See, here you should know about what is this non-violation compliance and situation compliance. See, under the TRIPS agreement, that is the trade related aspects of intellectual property rights agreement, non-violation compliance and situation compliance are 2 mechanisms that allow WTO members to address disputes related to intellectual property rights, that is IPRs, even if there is no actual violation of the agreement. in case of non-violation complaints, see, these are complaints brought forward by WTO members alleging that a measure taken by another member has nullified or impaired benefits occurring to them under the TRIPS agreement, even though no explicit provisions of the agreement has been violated. So it means that while the letter of the law might not have been violated, the spirit or intended benefits of the agreement have been undermined. So this non-violation complaint mechanism is somewhat controversial because it allows challenges to be made even in case where no specific rules has been broken. The TRIPS agreement includes this provision that allows non-violation complaints related to intellectual property rights, and on the other hand, the situation complaints. These are complaints regarding measures that might have been taken inconsistently with the provisions of the TRIPS agreement, but where there is no specific rule that has been breached. So these complaints typically arise when a situation has emerged that wasn't explicitly covered by the agreement but still affects the intellectual property rights of the complainant. So the situation complaints allow for disputes to be addressed even if the specific actions doesn't violate any specific provision of the agreement. So these two moratorium, which is already in place, has been extended till 31st March 2026. Apart from this, at the 12th Ministerial Conference MC12, ministers agreed to special rules allowing broader use of compulsory licenses for manufacturing COVID-19 vaccines. Here, compulsory licensing under WTO refers to a mechanism that allows government to grant license to produce patented products or technologies without the consent of the patent holder. This is typically done in cases of national emergencies, public health crisis, or other situation of high importance where access to essential goods like medicine or vaccine is crucial. So in that way, on the MC13, it was decided to use this compulsory licensing for manufacturing COVID-19 vaccines, and they have discussed about extending it to the COVID-19 diagnostic and treatments. But in the 13th Ministerial Conference, ministers could not make a consensus on expanding the coverage to diagnostic and therapeutics. This is one of the major outcome of the meeting. Apart from this, ministers adopted a decision to improve the use of special and differential treatment provisions, in particular those in the agreement on technical barriers to trade and the agreement on sanitary and phytosanitary measures. See here, the special and differential treatment provision or mechanisms within trade agreements that provide flexibility or accommodations for developing countries by recognizing their unique developmental needs and constraints. So it may involve actions like providing more training opportunities for officials from developing countries to better understand and utilize these provisions, as well as endorsing specific measures to streamline and operationalize them. So the ministers decided to increase the use of this particular provision. So you can write these outcomes in the first part of the answer. Now moving on to the second part of the answer. Here you have to assess the impacts of the outcome on India. Firstly, you can write that there was no progress in negotiations concerning the reduction of agricultural and fisheries subsidies. This deadlock continues as members including India and other G33 countries have strong reservations about linking public stakeholding for food security purposes to broader agricultural trade reforms. Similarly, India's proposal for allowing developing countries to extend subsidies within exclusive economic zones or up to 200 nautical miles from the shore and suggesting wealthy nations cease subsidies for fishing beyond this zone for the next 25 years. This proposal did not reach a consensus. Apart from this, India's food security challenge still persists as India urged for a permanent solution to the public stockholding issue for food security at the ministerial meeting. Then with respect to the China-led investment facilitation for development plan or the IFD plan, the conference saw continued debate over this particular plan, in which India remained opposed due to concerns over sovereignty and the integrity of the global trade system. Fourthly, on the peace clause, government programs started before 2013 is only added, and the Indian government wants programs started after 2013 to be included as well. But still, it remains uncertain. Along with this, India is seeking to improve market access for its goods and services in developed countries. coupled with measures to address non-tariff barriers that impede its exports, but it still remains undecided. In addition to all this, India advocates for a balanced and development-oriented intellectual property rights regime within the WTO framework. It seeks to safeguard its ability to promote access to affordable medicines, foster innovation, and protect traditional knowledge and biodiversity, but still it faces criticism from developed countries. So you can write these points in the second half of the answer. Now moving on to the conclusion part, here you can write that the 13th Ministerial Conference highlighted the ongoing challenges in reaching global consensus on trade issues, with significant disparities in priorities and policies among member countries. India, as a leader of the global south, should form alliances with like-minded nations like South Africa and small island states. Through this approach, India can offer alternative viewpoints and initiatives that better reflect the concerns and objectives of developing countries. So this way you can conclude the answer for this particular question. So in this news article discussion, we saw in detail about WTO Ministerial Conference, what are the outcomes of the 13th MC, and how it will have an impact on India. So with these learnt points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Look at this Sunday's news article. As we all know, chemical weathering of rocks plays a crucial role in reducing carbon dioxide level in the atmosphere. This article highlights a study that states the process of chemical weathering of rock is most effective at a moderate range of erosion rates. So this discovery offers a clear understanding of how erosion influences the carbon cycle and consequently the Earth's climate. In this background, let us learn about the carbon cycle from the prelims perspective. See, the carbon cycle is the natural process through which carbon is exchanged among the atmosphere, ocean, soil, plants and animal on Earth. It plays a crucial role in regulating the Earth's climate by controlling the concentration of carbon dioxide, which is a key greenhouse gas in the atmosphere. Now let us see how this cycle exactly works. Firstly, plants grabs carbon from the air to make their food through a process called photosynthesis. Then animals eat these plants and the carbon moves into their bodies. When plants and animals die, they break down and the carbon goes back into the air. Over a very long time, some of this carbon turns into fossil fuel like coal and oil. When we use these fossil fuels for things like driving car or generating electricity, we release the carbon back into the air. So the carbon cycle is all about how carbon moves from the air into living being and back again with a side trip into fossil fuels before returning to the air. Now let us see what does the word chemical weathering mean. See, chemical weathering involves the interaction of a rock with mineral solution, that is chemicals, to change the composition of rocks. In this process, water interacts with the minerals to create various chemical solutions and transform the rocks. Note that chemical weathering is a gradual and ongoing process as the mineralogy of the rock adjusts to the near surface environment. So in this process, oxidation and hydrolysis are the most frequent chemical process that take place. Also note that the chemical weathering is enhanced by geological agents like the presence of water and oxygen, as well as biological agents like the acids produced by microbial and plant root metabolism. So these two terms you have to revise in the perspective of prelims. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Look at this Indian Express article. It talks about a free trade agreement signed between India and the intergovernmental grouping of European Free Trade Association (EFTA). Remember, this EFTA group consists of Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway and Switzerland. See, this deal aims to bring $100 billion in investment over the next 15 years, and India is also aiming to diversify its imports away from China with the help of this FTA. So in this newspaper analysis, we shall understand about this particular deal and the significance of the deal. Firstly, let us see why the timing of this deal matters for India. See, as you all know, 2024 is an election year for the world. More than 64 countries, including India, are headed into elections this year. This may obviously translate into a long pause in free trade agreement or the FTAs. On the contrary, the window to diversify the global supply chain away from China is also narrowing down. So a trade deal finalized at this time is having geopolitical and geo-economic significance. Now the second question we should ask is, why did India push for investment commitment in the EFTA deal? See, India runs a trade deficit with most of its top trade partners, as various studies show that India's FTA are not bearing fruits of growth to it. For example, FTA with Asian nations, even though it did help India secure intermediate products, the average Indian tariff of 18% will be nullified by FTA. This means India loses more than it gains. This is the same with the case of EFTA. So, to offset this, the EFTA countries has made a commitment to make $100 billion investment into India. This investment could help India to generate economic opportunity, activity and jobs in exchange for giving market access to EFTA. Now, thirdly, we shall see which Indian sector could benefit from EFTA investment. See, the funds from the EFTA region are vital for any developing nations. Let us see an example. Norway has a $1.6 trillion sovereign wealth fund. It is the world's largest pension fund with a record profit of $213 billion in 2023. Know that it is noticeable for the investments in the technology stocks. Apart from this, the investments from EFTA will flow into the pharma, chemical sector, food processing and engineering sectors. EFTA is also looking at joint ventures in the above mentioned sectors. This will help India diversify imports away from China. Now, before concluding this particular discussion, let us see an economic data. See, India EFTA two-way trade stood at $18.65 billion in 2022 to 23 compared to $27.23 billion in 2021 to 22. On the other hand, India had a trade deficit of $14.8 billion in the last fiscal year. So this deal may act as a game changer to narrow it down and may increase India's capabilities in the technology sector through various joint ventures with EFTA countries. So these are certain very relevant facts that you have to remember about this news article discussion. It is a very important deal, so just remember it. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next news article discussion. Look at this news article. According to the article, cheetah, which had been relocated from South Africa's reserve, had given birth to 5 cubs in Kuno National Park, Madhya Pradesh. So in this background, let us briefly go through cheetah from the prelims perspective. See, cheetah are divided into 4 subspecies. They are the Southeast African cheetah, the Northeast African cheetah, the Northwest African cheetah and the rare Asiatic cheetah. See, the 3 subspecies of African cheetah are commonly termed as African cheetahs. Talking about cheetah in particular and its habitat, cheetah is the fastest land animal and it inhabits a variety of habitats across Africa and a small portion of Iran in Southwest Asia. They are predominantly found in open grasslands, savannas and semi-arid regions where their indispensable speed and agility allow them to thrive. These habitats provide the cheetah with the necessary space to reach their reachable speeds during hunting, which often involves chasing down swift prey like the gazelles and impalas. While they prefer open landscapes for their hunting powers, cheetah are also known to inhabit lightly wooded area, scrubland and even desert region where prey is still available. They require areas with ample cover for stalking and camouflage, but also enough visibility for successful hunting. In India, historically, the cheetah's range extended from the plain of northern India to the central and southern region, including parts of Gujarat, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. These regions offer a mix of grasslands, scrublands and open woodlands. See, during the gestation period of a cheetah, lasts around 90 to 95 days and cheetah are carnivore animals feeding primarily on small to medium size. Talking about their conservation and protection status, see, African cheetah are listed as vulnerable species in the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species, whereas the Asiatic cheetah are listed as critically endangered species in the IUCN Red List. Also know that both the African and Asiatic cheetah are listed in the Appendix 1 of the CITES list. Some of the threats faced by cheetah includes habitat loss due to human encroachment, fragmentation and degradation. They are vulnerable to poaching for their skin and body parts. Apart from this, human-wildlife conflict, where they are killed in retaliation for preying on livestock, also poses a significant threat. Additionally, low genetic diversity hampers their ability to adapt to environmental changes. So these are very important facts that you have to remember about cheetah. So with these learned points, now let us move on to the next part of the news article discussion, which is the preliminary practice question discussion. Look at this question about Central Consumer Protection Authority. See here, the correct answer for this particular question is option A, 1 only. The question is asking for the incorrect statements. Statement 1 is incorrect. CCPA is a statutory body established under the Consumer Protection Act 2019. So the first statement is incorrect. The second and third statement are correct. As we saw in the discussion, CCPA has the authority to conduct investigations into violations of consumer rights and can order the recall of unsafe goods and services. And the statement 3 is also correct. The Chief Commissioner heads the CCPA and the 2 additional commissioners focuses on goods and services. So here the correct answer for question is option A, 1 only. Look at this previous year question about casual workers. Here 3 statements are given and all 3 statements are correct. A casual worker is a worker on a temporary employment contract with generally limited entitlements to benefits and little or no security of employment. Supreme Court has ruled that casual workers are also entitled to social security benefits under the Employees Provident Fund and Miscellaneous Provisions Act. So the first statement is correct and the second and third statement is also correct. So the correct answer for this particular question is option D, 1, 2 and 3. Moving on, look at this question about cheetah. See here, the correct answer for the question is option D. Cheetah are listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List, except that all other options are incorrect. So displayed here is the mains practice question for you today. Just go through the question, try to answer it in the comment section. With this, we came to the end of the news article discussion. If you like the video, hit like, do comment, and don't forget to subscribe to Shankar IAS Academy YouTube channel. Now, thank you so much for listening.